Hello, welcome to the Wildline Podcast. I'm your host, Dan. This is a podcast about movies and how much money they make at the box office. Today I'm back after a little bit of a hiatus there. We're going to do a normal show for this weekend. We're going to walk through the top 10 at the box office here for the weekend of August 17th through the 19th, 2018. In terms of going through the top 10, I will do some deeper dives on the wide release openers like Crazy Rich Asians, Mile 22, and Alpha. And once we get through the top 10, I'll talk a little bit about what's going on in the limited circuit, limited releases, and then we will dive into what's happening at the box office over the next couple of weeks. But let's get to the top 10 for this weekend. Coming in at number 1 was indeed Crazy Rich Asians with $25.2 million. The theater count on that was about 3,400. The per theater average was just shy of $3,500 per theater on a production budget of $30 million. Now, this one's not that much of a surprise. I think over the last probably month to 2 weeks, there's been a lot of social hype about Crazy Rich Asians. The quality of the film seemed to be pretty good, 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. So critics really liked it. But I think more on top of that, on top of the quality, was the fact that this was one of the first movies made by Asian Americans and starring Asian Americans about Asian Americans. It was massive. It was a massive moment for that group of people. And I think it has been celebrated throughout the country as sort of a cultural milestone for Asian Americans. And I think that's one of the main reasons why this has not necessarily been a demographic play per se, because Asian Americans only make up about 7% of the US and Canadian population. So this way outperformed that group of people and has sort of crossed the bridge to other demographics as well. So it's not just like a super smart bomb niche target movie. It's having broad appeal, which is really important why it's doing so well now. So $25 million for the 3-day, $34 million for the 5-day so far, just over that. So a really good performance, especially on a production budget of only $30 million. This could have been a movie if it didn't have that social hype, that sort of cultural, let's celebrate cultural diversity hype that it does have. This thing would probably open at like 10 or something like that and maybe cap out at like 30 or 40. This way it's going to at least hit, 50, 60, 70 on higher. Because the film is of high quality and it has sort of branched out outside its target demographic, there is a chance that it has a very high multiplier. So it could be one of those movies where, it really just completely takes off and does like 100 or more than that, like a 4x, 5x multiplier. There is that potential there. Now, I don't know how that's going to interact with where we're at in the season, right? We're in the August season. It's super quiet. All the kids are going back to school right now, and through like the end of August, it gets really quiet at the box office and probably won't pick up again until The Nun comes out on, I think it's the 6th of September. Kind of the new horse slot, the first weekend, Labor Day weekend, I guess. Is that Labor Day weekend? I don't even know. That first weekend in September, I think, is going to be for a very long time, a time to release a massive horror film. All because of the success of it last year. Okay, so Crazy Rich Asians. Let's take a little bit closer look at some of the numbers here. Deadline says it's the first Hollywood studio movie in 25 years about westernized Asians, made by them, starring them. And so that's a huge deal, like I already stated, and I think that's one of the main reasons why it has performed so well. It feels like a cultural moment. The movie over-indexed in western cities in the United States. I'm imagining like Vancouver, Los Angeles, San Francisco, high Asian populations, right? In terms of who went to go see it specifically, there's a couple of interesting numbers here. Women were 68% of the total audience. Now, sometimes when I talk about these numbers, it is hard to put them into context. But I can, if you look at and base or compare these numbers to the average for all movies, and you can get that data if you're super nerd. The MPAA puts out a yearly report at the end of each year, and it talks about tickets sold and breaks it down into demographics. So that gives us our baseline as to is this in line with an average movie, or is it over-indexing in more than the average movie? In this case, the female audience is way over the average movie. Tickets sold by gender is about 49% female, male 51% overall. So really over-indexing on the female audience. Over the age of 25. Now, when we say over the age of 25, like, why is 25 the barrier is a question I think a lot of people ask themselves. For whatever reason, and I got to dig in deeper as to when this took place or why this happened. There's 4 quads in terms of an audience, right? There's male over and under 25, and there's female over and under 25. That's your 4 different quads. That's just how, for some reason, the industry has measured demographics. Now, obviously, you can get a lot more granular than that, and a lot of studios do, of course. But like, when as kind of the common vernacular of the movie industry, they talk about quads, and that's what they mean by quad. Male over and under 25, female over and under 25. So in terms of the over 25 audience, and one day I'll figure out why it's 25 years old, because if you look closer at actual ticket sales, that 25 breakdown doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I always thought the purpose was that because people under 25 buy so many tickets. And they do buy a large amount of tickets. I think, highest per capita maybe. But when you look at the breakdown between under 25 and over 25, just as an age group, 33% of tickets are bought by under 25. 67% is over 25. So it seems kind of like a strange barrier to break down 33% versus 67%. Wouldn't you want to break it down at like 50 to 50? As like a real quads? I don't know. I'm not gonna dive too deep into that. But in terms of the over 25 audience for Crazy Rich Asians, it was at 66%. That's right in line with an average movie. That sounds high, but the average tickets sold to over 25, 67% go to over 25-year-olds. So Crazy Rich Asians didn't really necessarily over-index on an older audience. In terms of, but where it did over-index, and this is kind of obvious when we've talked about this a little bit already, the Asian moviegoer here was 38% of the tickets sold for Crazy Rich Asians. Now, again, if I just threw that out there, it'd be like, well, is that big? Is that small? The average percent of tickets sold to Asian Americans, 7%. So it's a massive, massive over-index here. And then in terms of the Caucasian or white audience, for Crazy Rich Asians, it was 39%. And during your average movie or average tickets sold, 55% is usually white or Caucasian. So clearly that's what happens here. The Asian audience showed up. And then, other groups of people also showed up as well, because it was just the Asian audience. It's not going to do 25 over 3 days. It's not going to do 34 over 5 days. It's going to do like teens or lower. And if you look like Joy Luck Club would be another big sort of Asian American movie. I think that capped out at like $33 million total. That might be a situation where it was like so niche that it didn't really expand out of that demographic. So that's some specific numbers in terms of who went to go see Crazy Rich Asians. Obviously, the story there is the Asian demographic showed up in droves, with other groups also showing up as well. But obviously, the Asian audience way over-indexed your normal film. Okay, so Cinema Score was an A, so it should have good legs. We talked about the Rotten Tomato score of 92%, so that's great. What's a Post Track also is out, 4.5 stars out of 5, 85% positive rating with a 65% definitely recommend. Those are great numbers. So with this one, it's already a win right now. It's already like a standing double in a baseball metaphor. My question is, is this going to be like my Big Fat Greek Wedding? Is it going to have like a 4x, 5x multiplier? That's the real question for this film. And in terms of like guessing, I don't know. Like, it feels like it could, but we're in such a weird time now with the transition from summer to fall, and in maybe the weirdest 2 to 3 week period of the movies. It gets super loopy. Nothing comes out. Nobody shows up, even though This August we're doing so much better than last August. We're up 17% over last August. I think we capped out at like $660 million total the domestic box office in August, which is just terrible. I think it was the worst August last year since like the early 90s, like 25 years or something like that. So this August is up, but that being said, it's still a really weird month, and September is also really weird. It's just an odd transition period at sort of the, as we crossed over to the second half of the year. A similar time period would be like middle of January to like early February. You're just like, what's going on? Like, what's coming out? Like, people are so kind of hungover from the holiday season during that week in winter. This time, people are hungover from the summer movie season. So much stuff has come out. And usually just they kind of want to like take a break from going to movies until fall and like Halloween stuff starts coming out. So that's where we're at. So the reason I mention that is with Crazy Rich Asians, it can play two ways, I think. Now, if we just assume that it's a high quality movie and people seem to like it and it's already performed well and it's already broken out of its target demographic, those are our assumptions. Okay, so now what to do with this situation? I think it could branch out from this weirdness of the next few weeks. On the one hand, I think it could do really, really well, right? Because there's almost like a power vacuum over the next 3 weeks until The Nun comes out. So it has a lot of room to play. It has a lot of audience to pick up, I think. That's the one take that it could sort of respond to the weirdness of the dog days of August. The other path is people aren't going to movies as much. They're going back to school. Parents have to sort of take care of their kids. Kids are going back to college. A lot of people are on vacation now. So maybe the audiences just don't show up at all. I think it could play either way. My gut says it might be a little bit of the latter. I don't necessarily think it's going to do like a 4x multiplier or anything crazy. I think it probably has an average like 3x multiplier. Maybe ends at like 80 to 90 million. The real sort of barometer there, and we will watch this throughout the next couple of weekends, is does this at $100 million domestically? And then how does it play overseas, of course, is important. But if it hits that $100 million mark, that's a really fantastic performance. And the Warner Brothers would be ecstatic about it. Okay, so that's Crazy Rich Asians in number 1, 25.2 million. We will keep an eye on it over the next few weeks. Coming at number 2 is The Meg, 21.1 million. There was sort of a horse race here with Crazy Rich Asians and Meg on Friday, Saturday, but once the Saturday numbers came in, it was clear that Crazy Rich Asians was going to win. So 21.1 million, a 53% drop for this after a really overperformance in its opening weekend. I didn't do a show that last weekend that I would have spent probably an hour on the Meg, and I'm not going to do that now. But overall here, incredibly surprising performance. Everybody in the box office nerd world on Twitter, on all the different forums, we all thought this was going to be a huge bomb. Like, no one thought it was going to open over like 25 tops. I thought it was going to open up at 18. I thought it was just totally, the first trailer was awful, I thought. Didn't seem like there's a lot of quality. It just seemed like a really low rent, kind of ridiculous over the top shark movie. But I guess people love sharks so much. I can't figure out why it's performed so well. I will say this. It did have the perfect opening weekend. Early August, when the whole industry is in transition, people I think are looking for something not so serious, not an Avengers Infinity War, not even like a Black Panther or like a Solo. They want something just like super light and stupid, and they showed up for this. I mean, it's already at $83 million total domestically. I wonder if it's opened up in China, because it was a Chinese co-production. So what that means basically is that when this thing gets released in China, it won't make the normal 25% cut. It'll make a much higher cut for the studio. I think probably like 35-40%, which is great. Which is why they did that, because they felt like it was such an important market for them. It's done $314 million worldwide. $314 million. It opened up in China on the 10th and has done $50 million over there so far. Also, some good performers performed well in Mexico, and then Russia. I could see it doing well in Russia and the UK. For certain audiences, it's perfect. Like the Chinese audience, and I think the Russian audiences are good examples. And this is like really sort of maybe a little bit hyperbolic, but they tend to like flashier, more explosion-y movies that are kind of Michael Bay movie types. And I think The Meg really falls into that. Like, the plot's stupid, it's absurd, but it is, you know, I did see it. It's entertaining, it's fun. If you even remotely like sharks, you'll enjoy it. It's very much your throwaway popcorn August movie. And I think they just played it so well that people are showing up. And a 53% drop on its second weekend for the domestic market, that's not bad at all. You know, Deadline says something like, oh, like 60% is usually a drop for a genre film. Yeah, maybe. It really depends on what genre, though, right? So The Meg is essentially feels kind of like a horror movie, like a horror comedy. I would say like anything below 65% for this would be a really good drop. So the fact that it's at 53% is fantastic. This one could sort of like, I don't know, I think it might play really well over the next couple of weeks. Now here, the big question is this thing going to be profitable or not? It's at $130 million production budget. I've heard it's like 170 really when they get down into it. Let's just assume 150 for fun. It probably costs at least 3x that to release worldwide on every single platform, theatrical all the way to streaming and TV, DVD, all that kind of stuff, digital. So you're looking at $450 million total to release this thing. It's probably more like 500, but let's just say it's in the $400 to $500 million range to release it. In terms of take so far, you know, it's got $83 million here in the States, $300 million overall. Let's do some really rough math just for fun. So it did 45 here in the States to open. It's not going to have a higher than a 2.5x multiplier. I don't think there's any way. So it's probably going to close out at like 112. So it is going to be $112 million domestically. And then it's going to have a pretty high international take. Probably it'll come down to be like 25-75. That is 25% of its take will be the domestic market. 75% of that of its total take will be foreign. So let's just say 25% for fun. It's looking at about $450 to $500 million in its total box office. So this is nearing, it looks like it's going to near break-even point. So normally with a movie like this, you take the worldwide box office. It'll probably take home as actual revenue from every single platform that it's released on in every single region. Probably about 85 to 90% of that will be real revenue. So I think it's definitely in the break-even point. Now, going into this movie coming out, it felt like an absolute surefire flop and a financial mess because of the cost of production. But I think what will happen here is it will find a way to break even. And because it's done so well here in the theatrical release, I think it's going to do pretty well on VOD and digital as well, and streaming. Just because now there's like a hype surrounding it that wasn't there before. If this had flopped, it's almost like it's like an exponential flop or win. Because when it flops, then it's like the VOD, no one's excited about it, and streaming, no one's really going to care. It's like, oh, this movie flopped, I don't want to see this. But if it does well, then there's like a social excitement to it that plays out over its entire release window, from theatrical to home entertainment to like pay TV and stuff like that. So I think it's in the break-even territory. Not a huge win, but I think within context, it's a pretty big win because it seemed like, and everybody had assumed it was going to be a major flop, and it's not. It's definitely performing pretty well, very well to those expectations, but I think decently well overall. So that's The Meg at number 2 with $21.1 million. Coming up at number 3 was Mile 22, another wide release opener. This one from STX. It came in at $13.6 million. It was released in about 3,500 theaters. Per theater average was just about $3,900. Now, this is an action movie with Mark Wahlberg. The team up of Peter Berg as director and Mark Wahlberg as lead. They've been doing this for the last few years with sort of a wide range of performance, I should say, success, varying levels of success. So the Peter Berg, Mark Wahlberg team up again. I don't know, like this one seemed like kind of was DOA from the start. Tracking was in the high teens for this. It underperformed that. I don't think the multiplier is going to be very good. The cinema score was a B minus, which is very bad for a movie like this. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 20%. That's awful. Not even a ton of reviews either. The average rating was 3.9 out of 10. That's just like, critics hated this movie. Audience score on Rotten Tomatoes was also terrible, 43%, but we don't know if that's really true or not because it's so easy to hack. There's not too much to say about this. I think it's just like, it kind of seems like, oh, just kind of another throwaway action movie that they dumped in August that's not doing very well. But I think there's one sort of important caveat here, is that the team up here of Peter Berg and Mark Wahlberg has been going on for a while now, and I think it's kind of important to take a closer look at what's happening with Peter Berg as a director and sort of where he's been over his career, and see what's happening with him. You know, he got to start with Very Bad Things back in 1998. I mean, he's a big producer. He's in like, I feel like he produces like every HBO show or something. I don't know. He is so deeply embedded in the industry. I have a weird thing about the quality of his work. I've always disliked his work, and I couldn't figure out why he kept on getting all these projects and all these movies. I don't have a question for you, but you know, if you look back at the start here, Very Bad Things, which is an okay movie. I remember I've seen it at Blockbuster, renting it at Blockbuster. Back in 1998, then he did The Rundown back in 2003. So it was 5 years later before he's a big producer too. Before he directed another movie. Friday Night Lights is probably one of his bigger sort of cultural milestones in terms of a director. People really like that movie, they love the TV show, but that's really, I think, really hit his mark back in 2004. He did The Kingdom in 2007. Which does anybody remember this film? It was on TV, like pay cable TV does like these cycles, and they play like one movie for like 2 months straight. And The Kingdom was on. I watched it, like parts of it, like 3 or 4 times, or more than that even. And it's not good. It's not a good movie. I've never seen anything in his style that was really like, this is amazing. Friday Night Lights may be an exception, but half of that's the Explosions in the Sky soundtrack, right? So he does The Kingdom in 2007. The year after that, 10 years ago, Hancock comes out, which is one of the strangest blockbusters I've ever been released by a major studio in the last 30 years. Like, full stop. Like, it's got to be like top 3 weirdest movies ever put out by a wide release from a big studio, especially during this summer. The whole thing was supposed to be like a postmodern take on like a superhero and comic book movies. It just felt weird. It felt like, I can't even believe it's 10 years ago. It feels like it came like 20 years ago. It's a very strange movie. It performed pretty well though. Opened at 62, closed out at 227. So it wasn't a disaster. It's the best performing movie he's ever done. But it felt very strange. And I think a lot of people saw it were like, what the hell was that? It definitely felt like a Peter Berg movie. You're just like, this doesn't make any sense. None of this makes any sense. But it really kind of put him on the map even more as a big player, a big time director. And then Universal gave him a blank check with Battleship, which came out in the summer of 2012. Battleship's one of the biggest flops of all time. He fucked it up. He fucked everything up. It was a $209 million production budget. It did 303 worldwide. This probably was a write-off of well over $100 million, probably $200 million. Normally in a situation like that, where you have a director who's somewhat proven, although strangely not really all that proven besides Friday Night Lights, because if you look at The Kingdom, not very good. Hancock, kind of a mess. And, you know, if you look at Hancock, he kind of screwed up on a big level. Right, so the fact that they gave him Battleship seems really strange to me. They were like, "Here's $200 million to make this absurd movie. It's one of the worst movies released in the last 10 years, easily. It's an absolute shit show of a film, and it flopped financially horrifically. Battleship was expected to open at 65, not close at 65 domestically. So he screwed it up, and he kind of lost his golden goose then." So he comes back a year later with Lone Survivor, and then he sort of redeems himself. Production budget of $40 million, and this is his team up with Mark Wahlberg. Really great performance for this film, and people really love this movie, Lone Survivor. Closed out at 125 domestically here in the States, and that was 2013. It comes back 3 years later with Deepwater Horizon, another and kind of a similar production budget, $40 million. I'm sorry, I'm totally wrong. Deepwater Horizon had a production budget of $110 million. So another sort of blank check for a movie that nobody asked for. I went to go see it opening weekend. It was like a Discovery Channel docudrama was the level of production there. Now, some of the special effects were cool and stuff. It just was, there was no reason to spend $100 million on that film. That flops, does 20 opening weekend, closes out at 61. Doesn't even cover its production budget here in the States. Worldwide does 121. That's a massive flop. Like just baseline, you're looking at $300 million to produce and market. Total take worldwide is 121. It probably did about 90. Even if it did 100% of that as revenue, like if you looked at VOD and stuff, it's still over $100 million loss. So Peter Berg with another huge $100 million loss in his career. So this is why I always wonder, like, how does this guy keep going and keep making movies? It just blows my mind why people give him blank checks to do this. Then he came back later that year, actually later that fall, that Christmas, he came out with Patriots Day, another sort of very similar recent historical moment put onto film. And again, Peter Berg, Mark Wahlberg. Deepwater Horizon was also Peter Berg, Mark Wahlberg connection. So this is like their fourth movie in a row. They have collaborated with Mile 22. Patriots Day was a mess. It was an okay movie. Didn't really do hardly anything. Did $31 million total domestically. Production budget was $45 million because it was too soon. The Boston Marathon body wasn't really that long. I think it was 2013. So 3 years later, you come up with a movie. No. That's really in bad taste. This is just my Peter Berg ripping rant. I'm sorry, but I have to do it because I hate him so much. I don't hate him as a person. I hate his directorial work, and I hate the fact that he's an example of why the industry is so frustrating, because there are so many great artists out there. There are so many great writers, so many great directors who just need a chance. They need funding. They need a studio backing just to make a film. And the fact that this clown keeps on getting $40 million to make a movie, $100 million to make a Discovery Channel docudrama called Deepwater Horizon. I mean, it's just absurd to me, and it's kind of really insulting that these studios do that. Because here's the thing. You could say capitalism, whatever. Yeah, if you're a capitalist and you're all about money, why would you throw away money to this guy? I mean, from a business perspective, it makes zero sense why you would ever give him another budget. I wouldn't give Peter Berg needs to go the way of M. Night Shyamalan. That is, he is talented. He does know how to make action sequences and stuff like that. Like, he does get it. And there's certain parts of Hancock that I thought were brilliant. And Friday Night Lights is not bad, of course. But he needs to be penned in. He needs to be one of those guys where you give, hey, you got $30 million and not a dime more. Go make the best movie that you can make. And that's what they did in M. Night Shyamalan, and it helped him because M. Night Shyamalan is now back. He made Split. Glass is going to be one of the biggest movies ever next year. His M. Night Shyamalan's career has been saved by someone basically saying, I'm not going to give you more than $40 million to make a movie. And so Peter Berg is now failing even at that level because this one only cost about $40 million bucks, or maybe even less, and it's still doing terribly. So what does this all mean? Let's stop. The Peter Berg personal vendetta that I have is pretty absurd, but I say that because Peter Berg's career is just going down the drain at this point, and I don't really see, he hasn't had a hit since Lone Survivor. But even before then, he's lost hundreds of millions of dollars for studios. You gotta wonder if he's ever going to get a shot again. That's one of the reasons why I think he went with STX, because the STX is new on the street, and they're like, let's give this guy some money, because I don't think Lionsgate's going to give him any money. I don't think Universal's ever going to give him any more money. I don't know. He just, and Mile 22 is just an example of another failing. It's not just a financial failure, it's a critical failure. He's just not a great filmmaker here. And so that's that. And I think Mile 22 is just going to disappear from the multiplex, and nobody's going to remember it. And it's not going to really going to have good VOD or digital, because it's like, what the hell is this movie? Okay, end my Peter Berg rant. I apologize for that, but I had to get it out. Okay, number 4 was Alpha, 10.5 million from Studio 8 and Sony. Opened in 2,700 screens. This one's really a strange film. Was supposed to come out last fall, was slated for September 15th, 2017 to get released. Then it was moved to March 2018 this year, and then they pushed it to September 14th later this year, and then they pushed it back to August. This is a movie that I don't think anybody knew what to do with, and I'm really surprised that they made it. This is an example of a movie where I can tell it's going to flop from the moment I see the trailer. Or even the moment I've heard the tagline or the plot synopsis. There's no audience for this film. It's like a kind of a somewhat gritty take on a caveman who has a friend as a dog. Like, it reminded me of I can't remember. There's a movie that was very similar to this in the 90s that did terrible as well. When you saw the trailer for this, it's just like, who is this for? Like, if you look at the quads, is this for under 25-year-old men, under 25-year-old women, over 25-year-old? Like, there's just no, it's not for young people. It's not for older people. It's not for people in the middle. It just seemed like a really poorly conceived movie from the start, with no built-in audience whatsoever. The people who did show up this weekend, males over 25. This is how I know that it was not well thought out. The two biggest demographics for this film, the two biggest quads, were males over 25 and females over 25. Can you think of another movie where males over 25 and females under 25 have a similar taste? I mean, it just makes no sense. So this is kind of, it's DOA. It's not going to go anywhere. It was a mistake from the start. The production budget was way too high, $51 million. This is one of those movies where it's super easy to pinpoint the problem. You could say what you want about marketing. You could say what you want about the release schedule changing all over the place. But at the end of the day, it was just a really poorly conceived product that should have never come out. And that's sort of my hot take on Alpha. Number 5 this weekend was Mission Impossible Fallout, 10.5 million, 45% drop, really great. $180 million so far. This one will be the best performer of this series, it sounds like. So a real big hit for Mission Impossible Fallout. A great drop to 46% in its 4th weekend. Should cross over the $200 million mark here in the next couple of weeks. Number 6 was Disney's Christopher Robin, 8.9 million, 31% drop. That's great. Per theater average is about $2,500 in its 3rd weekend. Total take so far for Christopher Robin was almost $67 million. Doing okay. I think really, I was really underwhelmed by this performance. I thought it was easily going to break into the $100 million by now. I thought it was going to open really high. That just didn't happen. I think going back to Alpha in terms of product conception, who asked for this movie and who asked for the really muted, sort of morose style of it. It feels like a fall movie when you're releasing it in like the 1st weekend of August. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense there. Number 7 was BlacKkKlansman, which we haven't really talked about all that much. Did $7 million this weekend, a 35% drop. Has added theaters, about 276 theaters. It's currently in about 1,800 theaters. Per theater averages is strong for a 2nd weekend, almost just shy of $4,000, $3,900 per theater average. Total take so far for BlacKkKlansman is $23 million. I think that's kind of like, it's a good performance. I thought it was going to break out a little bit more than this, but I think Focus Features will be happy with $23 million by the end of its 2nd weekend. Number 8 was Slender Man from Sony Gem. Obviously a genre horror film, a 56% drop in its 2nd weekend, which isn't the end of the world. I thought it would be a lot worse than that. $5 million for the weekend, per theater average, approaching the Mendoza line at $2,100. Production budget was only $10 million. I think Sony Gems doesn't really care about this movie all that much. They threw $10 million at it. They threw it out in August. It's going to end at what? I don't know, maybe $30 million, something like that, maybe a little bit over. Maybe like just shy of 40. They're probably going to be pretty happy with that. I mean, the movie's terrible, got a D- on Cinema Score. No one's happy they saw this movie is what it comes down to. But I don't think Sony Gem is that unhappy they released it, because I think it's going to make a little bit of profit somehow, some way. Number 9 was Hotel Transylvania 3, still sticking around on its 6th weekend. $3.6 million in the weekend, 29% drop, great drop. Lost 400 theaters. Per theater average is $16.80. Total take so far for Transylvania 3 Summer Vacation is $154. I think the performance on this one is pretty good. I gotta take a quick look at what the other ones did, because I don't remember at the top of my head. It's right in the middle. Hotel Transylvania did 148 total. 3 is not at 153. 2 closed out at 169. So I think it's going to rival 2 there for the best in the series in terms of performance, which is kind of surprising, because it didn't feel like it popped off all that much in the first couple of weeks. But it's those low drops, which children's films are renowned for in their later weekends. A 29% drop in a 6th weekend is fantastic. So Hotel Transylvania was number 9. Number 10 was Mamma Mia. Here we go again. 3.3 million, 42% drop, which is good. Lost 500 theaters. Per theater average is just shy of $1,500. Total take so far for Mamma Mia 2 is $111 million. This one's a pretty good performance. I thought it was going to do a little bit better than this. It popped off, and then I think the second weekend drop, I think it was a little bit too high. The original did 144, but that was 10 years ago. Got inflation. It doesn't seem like it's going to leg its way up to there. So it's a little bit, I would say, I don't know what the expectation was from the studio, but it kind of feels a little underwhelming to me. It's not going to lose money or anything like that, but it kind of seems like it didn't pop off like it probably should have, especially with a pretty light last couple of weeks here. Okay, so that's the top 10. We breezed our way through the last half because I went on long rants about Peter Berg and Mile 22. But in any event, that's the top 10 done. Equalizer 2 is at 11, 48% drop. Any call outs here? Limited releases. The Wife came out on 4 theaters, 27 per K. That's going nowhere. That's way too low for a 4-screen release, for a theater release, whatever you call it. We the Animals also came out, 3 theaters, 22K per theater. Not good enough. Juliet Naked, 4 theaters, 15K per theater. Terrible performance. Blaze from IFC opened in 3 theaters, 15K per theater. Again, not very good. Memoir of War opened in 2 theaters, did 5K per theater. I don't even know what that is. A lot of these movies I've never heard of before. Some of them are foreign, I think. In terms of that, there's not a lot going on in the limited release area. No real call outs in terms of per theater averages that I'm seeing. The Wife obviously having the best per theater average of the weekend at 27K, but that's not impressive at all for 4 theaters if it was going to break out or something. I don't know if I know what The Wife is about. Yeah, I don't know what it's about at all, to be honest with you. I'm not going to try and guess and make something up. Okay, so that's limited, so not really much to talk about with limited, is there? Let's talk a little bit about the next couple of weeks, and then we'll close out the show. Axel is coming out this weekend from Global Road in about 1,500 theaters. That's DOA. I don't know. Again, product conception. Who is this for? Why are you releasing this? Who's going to show up and see it? Who's going to go buy a ticket for $10, $15 and go see this? Nobody is going to see Axel. It is just, it's like Monster Trucks, but worse. It just makes zero sense as a film. It's listed as family adventure and Box Office Mojo, but it's, I don't know. I looked at the trailer because it was been playing on YouTube and stuff as a pre-roll ad. And just it looks like a direct-to-DVD movie that came out in the mid-90s. It just, come on, hire a real writer, create a movie that people are interested in seeing. Create something valuable. Don't just throw schlock on the screen with computer graphics and think people are going to show up. People in general are stupid, but not that stupid. They're not going to put down their money to go see something that looks awful. And that's what Axel looks like. Happy Time Murders from SDX. This is a weird movie. Really weird movie. It looks kind of like a hard R puppet movie. I wonder if it has to be R, just in the stuff that I've seen already. Yeah, of course it's R. I don't know what's going on with this. It makes zero sense. Again, product conception. Who is this movie for? Who's going to show up and buy a ticket? Buying a ticket is like getting someone to vote. Like, you got to get them interested. You got to prime them, 10, 20 times over about the movie. And then you got to get them to go out and buy the ticket, right? So it's pretty difficult. Very high barrier of entry to get someone to go buy a ticket and see a movie. I don't see how you're going to get someone to go see Happy Time Murders. Like, if I was 25 and like super high, I would go see it probably. But like outside of that, outside of the like 420 crowd, I don't see it's not for kids. It's rated R. So you got to be 17, 18 years old to see it. And then it's like, it's going to cap out at like 30-year-olds. No one over 30 wants to go see this probably. So you basically have like 20 somethings who want to see this, and they probably are going to have to be their minds are going to have to be altered to go see it, either wasted or high. So it doesn't seem like a massive demographic, although Super Troopers, Harold and Kumar, like there is a demographic for that, or there is a movie for that. So I don't know. Like, I have no idea how Happy Time Murders is going to perform. I'm interested to see what Hollywood Stock Exchange is saying about these films. They're saying Axel has a $15 million or $15 price. That basically means it'll open, they're saying, at like $5 million. These movies are terrible. Happy Time Murders is a little bit higher. They have it at $35 per share, which basically translates to an opening of about $13 million. I don't know, maybe it connects with a group of people. My gut says it's a massive bomb, and it'd be lucky to make $10 million opening weekend. I don't think that it will. But that's this weekend. What a shitty weekend for August 24th. August 31st is even worse. And this is what I was talking about earlier in the show in terms of like the weird loopiness of the end of August and early September. It's not even a dumping ground. Dumping ground was the first couple of weeks of August. Christopher Robin was dumped. The Meg was dumped. Mile 22 was dumped. Crazy Rich Asians, I think, was really pinpointed for this time period because it was so open-ended. But it's usually a dumping ground. The last 2 weekends of August aren't even a dumping ground. They're like the dumping ground for the dumping ground. It is just like the weirdest 2 weeks in movies. Nothing comes out. Nothing even tries to come out. It's where you dump Happy Time Murders, who has, or Axel, two movies that basically have no audience and no one has any idea how they got made. And the 31st might even be Kin. I don't even know what this is about. James Franco's in it. Dennis Quaid's in it. Carrie Coon. It's a sci-fi movie from Lionsgate. I've never heard anything about this. I've never seen a trailer. I have no idea what this is. It's from a decently major studio. Lionsgate's not like top 3, but they're in top 6 or something. So I don't have no clue what the thought process here is with this one. But this is okay. So the last weekend in August is the worst weekend ever. It's just, for whatever reason, it's just awful, and no one wants to put out anything, and it is just a barren wasteland. And so Kin is going to be the flagship movie for the worst weekend of the year. And then looks like a Latin from Pantaleon, or I think that's how you say that. It's like a Spanish film for the Spanish speaking Americans. Ya Veremos is coming out. Probably do okay because it's costs like $2 million to make and it has a built-in audience there. Okay, so that is the end of August. Let me just briefly dive into September before I sign off here. Operation Finale, I don't know what that one is. MGM. Oh, this is like the World War II movie with Oscar Isaac and Ben Kingsley. No idea why this is coming out in theaters. This has direct to VOD or direct to streaming written all over it. Again, getting dumped in that last week of August. And then, then we have a pulse. We have a pulse on Friday, September 7th. Finally, the box office is going somewhere and people are going to show up. Peppermint, whatever. I don't think that's going to do very well. The big movie is going to be The Nun. And I have no idea how big it's going to open. I feel like The Nun is going to really pop off here, because for the next couple of weeks, nothing's coming out. The movie theater industry is basically going to collapse, I think it seems like. Crazy Rich Asians can't sustain $100 million weekend. It's not going to happen. So with The Nun, you're looking at, it's currently listed at $70 a share on Hollywood Stock Exchange. I'll translate that. That's probably about $26 million. That's way too low. I feel like The Nun is going to pop over 40, maybe even $50 million opening weekend. It is going to be, I think, huge. My guess right now would be like $42, $43 million. There's just horror it's been going through a renaissance creatively and, financially with Split and Get Out and It. These three heavy hitters. Or A Quiet Place this year. I mean, it's just been nonstop for horror movies. We're really in this awesome period. I think The Nun's going to ride that wave and open really high. I would guess basement would be 30, but I'm thinking low 40s for that. That's going to be big on September 7th, September 14th. Things start to pick up a bit. The Predator opens on the 14th. That should be huge. I'm trying to see what else over the next couple weeks. Smallfoot comes out. I'm not really sure what this one's all about. Oh, okay, that's an animated film. Predator, The Nun, Smallfoot, Night School comes out on the 28th. I think that's Fahrenheit 11/9 also comes out in September on the 21st. Those are the big movies for September. So nothing that's going to be like $100 million opening, but I could see like a $40 million opening for one of those. And then sort of the stuff to look forward to after that, probably Venom is going to be big this fall. Maybe I should do a fall movie preview. That would be a lot of fun. What else in October? Halloween comes out October 19th. Goosebumps 2 comes out October 12th. I think those are going to be the bigger movies. And then you get into the holiday season with like Fantastic Beasts 2 and Dr. Seuss and Nutcracker. And I wonder, the biggest movie I think for the year, or biggest sort of last half movie opening to me is going to be Mary Poppins. Aquaman's coming out obviously, but I feel like Mary Poppins coming out this Christmas is going to be just so massive. I think it's going to be the biggest movie, one of the biggest movies of the year. I think a big surprise to a lot of people. Okay, that's all I got for this weekend, guys. Thanks for listening. I will be back. Maybe I'll do a fall movie preview this week. Maybe I just got excited about that. But at the very least, I will be back next weekend. Thanks for listening, guys.